Final session of session 2, day 2, lots of twos there. It's a live interview from Global Choices, sharing insights into their mission on driving action on the ice crisis, prioritizing the Arctic and Antarctic global commons.
Now, I am not an explorer. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm actually just a survivor. And these photographs that I'm showing you here are dangerous. They are the ice melt of the South and North Poles. And ladies and gentlemen, we need to listen to what these places are telling us. And if we don't, we will end up with our own survival situation here on planet Earth.
It was 2009, and at the age of 22, my small initiatives around Earth Hour and Earth Day to raise awareness about climate change in India somehow caught the eye of polar explorer and leader Robert Swan OBE. His belief and trust in me gave me the motivation to join an expedition to the most remotest part of Earth, Antarctica, an experience that has since motivated me to devote my life to working towards combating climate change. My name is Divya, and this is the story of the journey that changed my life. With some strong corporate funding, I was finally able to make it to the 2041 Foundation's International Antarctic Expedition in November of 2009. On the expedition, I saw firsthand how climate change and human action is changing the last pristine parts of Earth, and grew to understand the magnitude of global impact the loss of ice would have on our future generations. Since my return, I have helped set up local environmental and specifically clean energy initiatives, and worked on global scale operations to track and reduce emissions of multinational companies by understanding carbon footprint across the world. I also worked directly with the 2041 Foundation to set up solar-powered libraries for kids in forests of central India and the remotest parts of the Himalayas. I am now proud to have become a part of the Global Choices Arctic Angels Network, where we mentor and collaborate with young leaders from around the world to move the ice crisis to the top of policy agenda. This year, 2 more of the world's most talented, creative, and curious young leaders have the opportunity to go to Antarctica, where they can have the same life-changing experience that I had. A truly sustainable world needs investment in its future leaders. Each place on our expedition costs $16,250. We hope there are corporations or individuals attending here today who share the vision to empower young leaders like the opportunity I was given a decade ago. Sponsoring a place, either fully or in part, will enable these future leaders to experience Antarctica's wondrous hidden beauty, to see the reality of climate change, and come back motivated to make the changes that we need to see today. Thank you, and remember, we can't plant ice.
Okay, what a brilliant introductory video. Let's go to our live interview now with Global Choices. Inge Relph, Executive Director and co-founder of Global Choices. And I recognize Divya, the star of that video, Divya Nawale there, Arctic Angel at Global Choices. Thank you, Inge. Thank you, Divya, for joining us today. Looking forward to this discussion. Inge, if I could start with you, I know you've worked in a number of sectors. You've been an advisor at the highest level as well. Why Global Choices and why the Arctic?
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here, particularly to Climate Action and to UNEP FI. It's terrific that we given this opportunity. Why global choices? Well, I was trained in corporate strategy, and as you know, that's about seeing gaps and opportunities and understanding trends. And so in 2018, when we were looking at the climate scene, we realized that although there's a huge uptick in climate action, really exciting, lots of tree planting and innovation, I mean, a lot of it being funded by many of you here at CIF, but in reality, there isn't a lot of prioritization or joining the dots. And although carbon clearly is critical to planetary well-being, but the carbon conversation has tended to dominate, in part because it can be readily valued and monetized, unlike the social natural capital, which, until recently, the Dasgupta review and other work, it's much harder to value, and therefore was taking a back seat. And I must say, it's been really heartening in the last 2 days to listen to how much biodiversity has moved into the conversation, because that's pretty new. And I think the forum has, all credit to the forum for highlighting that. But it's also only recently that we're getting better joining the dots and understanding that, everything is interdependent and inextricably linked. We are systems dependent, and we really need to pay much more attention to the protection and the governance of these great master systems. Things like the oceans, the atmosphere. These are called global commons. And they are areas beyond national jurisdiction and critical because they have such massive cascade impact, as we heard actually from the previous speaker on the risk side. Pretty much all the investments we've been talking about these last few days will be affected if we lose these. And the most urgent amongst them are the polar ice caps. And, so long we've sort of thought of them as being up there somewhere and being frozen north and not really relevant. But they're actually warming, the Arctic in particular is warming far faster than anywhere else on Earth. And it's actually literally putting the ice there on the edge of extinction. We've lost 28 trillion tons of ice in the last 30 years. And we are losing these thermostats on the Earth. And apart from this, concerned scientists, very little attention is being paid to what's unfolding up there. And whilst it's critically important to reach our Paris targets, but at the same time, it's really, really important that we do everything we can to protect the remaining ice and this biosystem. And you would think it's logical. Are we doing that? Far from it. With an estimated $100 billion in investment is poised to go into exploiting these riches in the next 10 years. The Central Arctic Ocean is really becoming a frontier of exploitation. And we've got commercial claims to mine the deep seabed for rare earth minerals and oil and gas, a predicted 10-fold increase in shipping, which of course is a major emitter of black carbon from the heavy fuel oils, and then a plan to break a sort of transpolar Suez Canal through the ice, mainly to ship LNG. And there's nuclear testing, and then of course, it's really getting really contentious on the geopolitical front with a lot of militarization. So technology is enabling a lot of this, but then there is a moral question. Because we can do these things, we can now deep seabed mine, does it mean we should be acid stripping this last pristine biome? And yes, so that's why we chose Global Choices as a name. We have to make hard but important choices.
And Inge, you mentioned exponential global risks. What risks should we be waking up to right now?
Well, as I mentioned, the ice caps are the reflectors on the Earth, and they reflect the Earth's sun. It's called the albedo effect. And when we lose the ice, it means much more heat is absorbed into the oceans, and it triggers this cascade of impact. So it affects, and we're actually only just beginning to understand how this whole system works, but it affects atmospheric and ocean circulation. And then the polar jet stream gets destabilized, and then we have these unpredictable weather events, as far south as the mid-latitude. The insurers who are here will remember for sure, the beast from the east that we experienced in Europe, and then the recent Texas freeze. but also, the droughts and the heat waves that bring crop failures and higher food prices. And as these oceans warm, they acidify and cause species to migrate, and exacerbating the livelihood loss for many who depend on fish. And so there is sort of food insecurity that creates economic woes, the social unrest, and migration. I mean, just look at Venezuela currently. And then, as if we haven't got enough troubles to think about, the melting ice sheets from Greenland and Antarctica. And today there was a report out, actually, which really highlights how this is exponentially increasing the melt and the sea level rise. And it's a grave risk to the small island states, but also 600 million coastal dwellers. And so I think it's the Pew Trust who estimated that the cumulative cost to our global economy in the next 40 years will be about $2.4 trillion. And it's probably a lot more than that if we really calculate. I mean, there's a lot still of work still to be done on those calculations. But
Divya,
we do need.
Sorry, Inge, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, so it matters if we want to have the ESG to be meaningful, and we want to deliver the Paris Agreement. We have to go to the root causes of those risks. And so our call is to support, please, a moratorium, a pause, a precautionary principle pause, a 10-year moratorium to protect the Central Arctic Ocean ice. And then the other bit is, of course, please check your portfolios. Make sure that there isn't anything that you're supporting that will hasten the destruction of the ice.
I want to bring in Divya. Clearly, Divya, policy always lags because of political difficulties. Innovation is tough because of that. And this area, I know, is a big mishmash of conflicting laws. But I know there are some interesting precedents. What have you learned, Divya? I think you first went to the Antarctica for the first time when you were 22 years old.
Yeah, Mark. So I was 22 and had never seen snow in my entire life coming from tropical South India. So for me to really be able to look at ice and understand the ice crisis at that young age became a very formative experience. It exposed me to climate change, understand climate science, and then put me on a life path really that helped me to reach where I am today, talking about clean energy projects, working and engaging people on carbon footprint management, and really kind of making ESG as like from a concept to reality, where I can connect and say that, oh, I actually experienced the ozone hole in Antarctica. And that's really what happened down there, and that's causing our climate to change. And this is what we need to do back in the real world to be able to stop the ice crisis. So in that sense, it's been because of corporate funding that got to me at the right time in 2009, that I was able to create that experience and be able to completely change my career and take it in the direction that I have. And I think through Global Choices, that is what we are trying to achieve for two more people to have that kind of a life experience and be able to share that with the world and create that journey.
We're getting some questions, ladies, from the audience, which is fantastic. So let's ask a couple of those. I'll ask you both this. Is there a potential for young explorers listening? I mean, what do they need to do to qualify for a place on one of your expeditions? If you're young, unlike me, what do you need to do to qualify for one of these expeditions? Inge, maybe you can answer that, and then we can ask Divya.
We've been running a competition to find. We have two places, and to find two incredibly talented young people. And I have to tell you, it's extraordinary, the quality and the breadth that these young people have already experienced and the work that they've done. So we look to see what impact have they made, What networks are they connected to? Is this a heart passion? Because that matters. And what impact will they be able to make when they come back? So those are the main criteria. And as I say, it's quite awesome. For sure, I think my generation hadn't achieved what so many of these young people have done already in their young lives.
I mean, Inge, you've made this truly intergenerational, and to be future fit, you've determined that Global Choices needs to be feminine led. Why is that so important to you?
Well, it's interesting because you look at the trends, and I've just talked about systems. This is a systems problem, a holistic problem. And there tends to be, and I've learnt this from my work in peace building, that the feminine energy is the one that looks to the whole. It tends to put self aside and self-interest aside and really look to the whole well-being of the whole. And there is a very interesting trend in feminine leadership arising. And so we decided that we wanted to foster this feminine. And of course, it's not only in the female, it's present in men too. But we have to generate this understanding that we can't solve this with very small bits and pieces. We have to see the whole thing. And so that was why we decided to set up the Arctic Angels and investing in young women, because they are the leaders of the future. And in fact, it was the Pulitzer Prize winners, Gersma and D'Souza, who said that actually the feminine is the operating principle of the 21st century. And I do believe that's true.
What about from your perspective, Divya? Why, from your perspective, is being genuinely intergenerational so important?
I think there are some amazing examples that we've had. I think one really good example is the Antarctic Treaty, which has worked very successfully for 6 decades now. And it has preserved Antarctica as a land for science and peace. Similarly, we have the Montreal Protocol. There are so many kind of examples like this, which have shown us that the global commons can be protected. And so really, I think what young people are looking for today is guidance and to be able to understand how we can use the wisdom from these generations. So in that sense, young people are essentially looking for that guidance and support along with formative experience to be able to connect the dots and say that, okay, we were able to protect the environment in the past this way, and this is how we can do it in the future as well. And with a number of companies jumping into the whole net zero action, as we have been talking about all day and throughout this forum, it's really important for the youth, who are the biggest stakeholders, especially when 50% of the global population today is under the age of 30. I think it's time to get them involved in a big way, and that will only come through the guidance and support of the older generations.
Brilliant. Inge, we're getting more questions. The audience loves this topic. One question is, how do you mitigate the environmental and carbon footprint of the initiative? How do you mitigate the environmental and carbon footprint of the initiative?
Of Global Choices, or the initiative to protect. Well, clearly there is a really important, if you're protecting the Central Arctic Ocean, it's about principally getting policy in place. And here is where we're going to have to innovate, because we don't have time to do the traditional treaty process. By then the Arctic will have melted. So we're putting together, or we have put together, a group that is thinking about how do we actually accelerate protection of that Central Arctic Ocean ice, and say, look, we can't have shipping through here. That will in itself mitigate the footprint. And that we need to look at ways of protecting from deep seabed mining and actually aligning some of the regulations that come out, because whilst we can have an MPA, a marine protected area, it'll protect the surface area, but ironically enough, there are undermining rules that literally undermine it, in the sense that you're allowed to have the intercontinental shelf. If it would extend under your MPA, you are still then able to exploit that. So, all of these policy initiatives, and of course, policy is notoriously difficult to innovate. And that's why people don't do it, because it's so hard, and tend to be dealing with short-term political interests. But I do think as a global community, and employing the mobilization of the global citizens who see this as belonging to all of us, we can actually start pushing for new types of regulation and new types of governance that take really cognizance of the fact that this is critical to these systems are critical to everything else.
Yeah. Inge, I know that leadership is very important to you, and a truly sustainable world obviously needs its leaders and needs to cultivate its leadership. How do we cultivate leadership in the world?
Well, I think partly is this intergenerational relationship that we have been building. And as you've just heard from Divya, wisdom, Sophia, is what we really need in leadership. And that is very present in any age. And we're seeing it increasingly present in young people. So it's really important that we actually support young people to be in places like this where they can speak out and to have genuine, respectfully shared platforms, and to be able to foster their skills by mentoring, but also putting them on board, getting them into places where they can be the long-term sustainable leaders. And then I think the other piece that I feel is terribly important for all leaders, including ourselves, and we work on this as a team and with our angels, is about paying attention. We've heard a lot about science, but I would say one of the things that we need to understand more than anything is the neuroscience of climate change. We need to be able to pay attention to things more deeply, and put our energies, we tend to put our energies into the things that we pay attention to. So learning also that our neuroplasticity is so much greater than we imagine. So things like, I know this sounds slightly tangential, but there's such a cognitive bias about what we invest in. And for so long, we had this cognitive bias that green investments were not going to have a payback. And I think there is this bias that young people somehow don't have the skills that are needed. But actually, I would say they're far more talented than our generation. And I feel delighted that we'd be handing over the world to them, because I think they're going to make a much better job than we have.
Inge, how can we get involved? How can our audience, they're sitting here, they're inspired by you both, how can they get involved?
Well, there are a number of things. As I've mentioned, we are going to have to innovate. And I have heard the last 2 days some really interesting things where we can join the dots, in terms of risk management, in terms of creating some novel financial instruments, because somehow we need to be able to value these great global commons and create ways of financing the mitigation of the impact. And then the other piece is we are wanting to send these 2 young people off to Antarctica and have the experience that Divya's had. So if there are organizations that would like to sponsor that, there is a sponsorship package on our booth. And please be in touch with either Divya and myself. And then the other bit that could be great for organizations here is to actually send somebody from your organization on this trip. So, sponsor an angel and possibly have a competition within your own organization, or find a star within your organization that you would like to send on something like this, because for sure this is a way to ensure that we have sustainable leadership going forward, because it totally changes, because it's experiential knowledge.
Divya, final words from you, your final words to our audience whose appetite has been whetted by what you've said today. What do you want to say to them to inspire them further?
I just want to thank Inga for all the amazing work that she has done to bring together angels, Arctic angels from across Philippines to Mexico, bringing in intergenerational, feminine, and indigenous wisdom, really making it an inclusive climate action worth initiative. And I think as someone who has been twice to Antarctica and also have been to the Arctic, I've been a part of Arctic Circle Assembly discussions, to be able to really understand climate action, and especially focusing on policy governance. I truly believe that young people today need inspiration, and that inspiration will come through experiences like this. And I know that there are a number of investors here, and I think my wish is that we invest in our future through our younger generations.
Well, you both inspired us. Thank you both. Thank you so much. Thank you, Divya. Thank you, Inge. And please do, all of you, visit the Global Choices virtual booth on the event platform. You know where it is, to connect with them, to connect with Inge, to connect, of course, with Divya, to find out how you can become a sponsor and support their mission as well. And just to remind you, Climate Action is proudly supporting the Global Choices mission, enabling the mission to fortify our future leaders, to ensure that we make sustainable choices as we're moving forward in generations to come. We do invite you to join their mission. Get in touch with the Global Choices team. Visit the virtual exhibition on the event platform. Thank you, Divya. Thank you, Inge. We will see you soon. Thank you very much indeed. Wow, what a day. What a brilliant end to the day. So much fun, so much education, so much inspiration. We've had the Sustainable Investment Spotlight. We need to find the right investment opportunities to support the transition. What's the hope for the future? More natural food chains with climate investments. We heard about the role that emerging markets are playing right now. Korea, China, Brazil. Emerging markets have a huge capability when it comes to the energy transition. A lot of outperformance when we're talking about investments is down to the re-rating of stocks. That was interesting. But electric vehicles, solar, wind, carbon capture, hydrogen, lab cultured meats. These are the big long-term investment opportunities. That's what our panelists said. We also had a nature and biodiversity panel exploring the opportunities to scale. The role of intermediaries was fascinating. They talked about blended finance, capturing value and pricing. We need a mind shift from finance for conservatism to finance with conservatism as well. We had a wonderful climate leaders insight about the energy transition in emerging markets. So many interesting developments there. We had a panel on managing climate-related financial risks. If the financial system is to be sustainable, we need to assess financial risk and consider environmental impact of investment decisions to avoid greenwashing. The scenario analysis toolkit is evolving. There's a lot happening right now on the convergence of standards. We heard about blockchain as well. Brilliant. And of course, we finished the day with that wonderful session from Climate Action. Please visit them on their virtual expo. Okay, we're going to discuss the continuation and the importance of these points on Tuesday. 2 more days. That was part 2. We had part 1 on Tuesday. Parts 3 and 4 of the Sustainable Investment Forum, of course, are next week, Tuesday and Thursday. And as if by a grand coincidence, Guess what's happening on Thursday? Two significant events. Yes, it's Earth Day and it's President Biden's World Leaders Climate Summit as well. So what a wonderful coincidence that day 3 is Tuesday, day 4, that massive day, Earth Day, and President Biden's World Leaders Climate Summit as well. Before I say goodbye, I know you're done with me. Before I say goodbye, very quick, a reminder, we are open, the virtual platform, for the duration of the forum. Please watch all the sessions from part 1, part 2, always on demand. We've recorded absolutely anything. If you miss anything, you can always watch it on demand. Do network, do schedule one-to-one meetings. That's the brilliance of this virtual forum. You can meet people virtually. It's so easy on the event platform. You can also watch all the sessions on demand. You can get onto the virtual expo, gain access to our exclusive insights and meet partners, meet sponsors, engage, connect, bookmark upcoming sessions as well to receive reminders. That's it from me. We're going to see you Tuesday, April the 20th, 10 a.m. UK time. See you then.